Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Wanted to go into the next scenario, if that's okay with yourselves, if we can jump straight into it to make the best use of time. So the next scenario reads, there it takes two. I can't have children, unfortunately. My husband and I have always wanted children, and we have tried for many years. My husband is so lovely. I told him that it was not a problem for him to go and have a child with someone else, obviously in a halal manner, but he won't, out of love for me. I'm hoping, inshallah, that if you read out my letter and explain to him that this is not wrong and it is a good option, that he may, inshallah, change his mind. This is from a sister in the USA. Would you like to start off, Sheikh, about the issues that arise out of this? The wife trying to encourage her husband that it's in the long term a good
yes
thing.
I think it's a tricky situation. In most cases, you have the husband trying to juggle between the idea of having children and also not breaking his wife's heart. And his wife is telling him, I want you to have someone who follows on your footsteps or has your name going forward. I don't want to be the cause of this. But remember that sometimes it's infertility is due to the husband, not necessarily the wife as well. So that has to be established before he undertakes that particular steps, and then it's stuck really because of that. I am aware of one particular relationship of a respected Shia brother who had this scenario, and his wife was basically on his case. He has to get, and he has got married and he has had children, and very strangely they all live in one house. Now that I don't know if it can be repeated in other places.
That must be very unusual, right?
It is unusual. They live in one, and the first wife really loves the second, and their relationship is very good, because the first one knows that why he got married, and she supported him. And so it's always about the mindset. So it's about how you approach it. But even though they sometimes you intrinsically your heart tells you that it has to be done, your mind doesn't accept it, or vice versa. And so there might be later on, God forbid, not in this instance, but in other cases, some kind of a problem because they may not get along or whatever it is. But like we said, polygamy has its advantages, and has its uses rather, and this is one of them. It has to be case by case basis. There are people out there that say, there's absolutely no way on this earth that I would marry, a second wife for this reason. And there are others that are desperate for children and they would do anything to have children. There are others who would say, okay, a middle ground is to adopt, but adoption has its limitation, specifically regarding the issue of hijab and mahram, non-mahram issue, which is a problem, because once you adopt an individual, they're basically, if it's a girl, then she has to wear hijab from the father, and if it's a boy, then the mother has to wear hijab.
What about in the sense of in that scenario, the father being alone with his adopted daughter and things of this nature? Is that a problem in Sharia?
Yeah, I mean,
or vice versa, because I think the reason why I asked, the sisters asked the question, if a husband was to get married and the child of that marriage was to come and live with them, for example, how would she be, as a kind of foster mother, or how would that?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a problem in terms of the mahram situation. That's not a problem because she's considered also a mother for him. Yeah, she's considered a mother for him. But if there was to be adoption, then that's a problem in the sense of mahram, because adoption doesn't make the individual a mahram to them.
What about surrogacy? Is that allowed?
In the sense of?
You get the DNA from both parents and somebody else is basically the incubator, the carrier.
Yeah.
But the genetics come from the male and the female.
The ulama say that the mahram situation is for the actual child that was born from the actual womb. So the mother that carried the child is the actual, the DNA is not going to make that, according to a lot of jurists. But it's a difficult one, because obviously they have to face a lot of challenges. They have to face a lot of options. But like I said, any decision, if it's done in a mutual respect and with cooperation, but also going back to the idea of having things written, I would advise that on this issue, people, I don't know why people have issues with writing things down. You know, when we go to lectures and majalis and sermons, we say to people, you're going to listen to a lecture 45 minutes, or you're watching this program. Automatically, with sitting at home thinking, it will stay in my mind. But for instance, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, write, because if you don't write, you will forget. It's a clear sentence. I mean, it's just a clear thing. We all know about it. But the Imam alayhi salam have said, do write things, document things, note things down. So in a relationship like this, if they are coming to a conclusion that, look, I need to get married, then have an agreement, a memorandum of understanding, I don't know what you want to call it, but something which stipulates that, look, you are happy with this. Now you've turned against it. But look, this is what you've said 10 years ago.
On record.
Most of the
Yeah,
time
on record,
when
it's
you're
there.
getting married, you're not thinking about, what if I can't have children? You're thinking about the here and now. You're so caught up in.
No, maybe in the
But
case
I
of
think
this
it's a good idea
going
that-
forward, isn't it?
but
In terms
you
of going
should.
forward.
But I think even before that, look at all eventualities as best you can, have them covered. That's my thing. But I want to just say, my heart goes out
It's a
to the
heartfelt
sister.
one, isn't it? Yeah,
I really do, because she probably has the urge to be a mother, or But I really applaud her for being so open about it and being so almost logical versus emotional. But what I would suggest to her is, this is a big decision. You may feel like this one day or 1 week or 1 year, but really that might bring up other emotions. So I would advise her to seek some counselling, because this is a big decision.
So you said it might bring up other emotions. What
Well,
would your
you
concern
might,
be?
you know what happens sometimes, we really feel at this time this is the best decision, and we really, passionately in front of Allah, we believe, for example, that yes, I want my husband to fulfill his rights and have children, etc. But the reality and your emotions, later on, she might see the child and it will make her own self-worth become lower, because she couldn't provide that. Unconsciously, not intentionally to cause fitna or anything,
That's a
but
possibility.
it's
That's
a possibility.
She needs to think
so
about
she
that.
needs to explore these avenues. How would the parenting, what role would she have with that? You're dealing with another woman, maybe the other woman wouldn't want her to reprimand the child because it's not hers. These little things that you don't factor in. She really needs time to explore these feelings in a professional environment. It's not something that she can decide today, and it might have other ramifications.
Once, I was with an individual who told me that his wife had given birth, and unfortunately the child died within the first few hours, and they were really heartbroken. And I consoled them, I offered condolences. There's absolutely no denying of the difficulty of either losing a child at a young age or not having children. And I think people might say it's easy for people who have children to say how it feels, and there are probably those who have children would never know how it's hard for those who really want to have children but can't. But there's one thing we can say, certainly, as far as Islamic teachings is concerned, and that is, if, for instance, we fast forward and God the Almighty bestows or favors an individual with a child, and that child at the age of 14 or 15, God forbid, develops the behavior or the tendency to be very harmful to others, becomes a recluse, becomes somebody who's really out there inflicting pain and suffering, and the parents don't have any control. He's jailed because of drugs, bad reputation for the family, and so on. If there were many parents, if they were given the option, would you have had this child? They would say no.
So true. And what I would also advise this sister is also, just to interject, is surround yourself, if you have a love for children. There's so many things in our community that you could help with, madrasas, people with disability, you can still have that mother nurturing role. There's charities, there's mentoring you can do. There are so many things that you can exercise that need to be a mother. But just because they're not your children doesn't mean the responsibility is any less. In fact, it's more if you're teaching other people's children the way, find these things, feel the urge, but do look into it, I would say.
I just wanted to touch on this important point about the understanding of the whole system of this existence and the idea of the calamities, because I think most of us appreciate that it happens. But one thing to understand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a hadith Qudsi, He says, I give and I take. And I give knowing that when I give, that individual can handle it, and I take knowing that they can handle it. In that, people sometimes say, I'm poor, I've worked my life and I'm not getting to the level of wealth that I want to. Yes? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a beautiful narration, says to Dawood, oh Dawood, there are people that I make sure they stay wealthy, because if I know if they become poor, I lose them. And there are those who are poor, I know if they become wealthy, I lose them. Lose them meaning what? Yeah. Meaning that they get away from God. Allah wants us to go to paradise. That is the fact that we have to wake up in the morning and understand Allah in His ultimate beautiful system and compassionate existence wants us to attain salvation in Akhirah. And He has facilitated and given us everything we need to do that. And at the same time He gives and He takes. It's part of rizq. Rizq, sustenance, is not just wealth, it's children also. Yes? Sometimes we don't have kids because of our own actions. The Quran says, Nuh alayhi salam says to his community, they came to him, once somebody came to Imam al-Hasan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam and said, I'm unable to succeed in my business. He said, do istighfar. He goes away. Someone else comes and says, I have a farm and it's suffering because there's drought. He says, do istighfar, seek forgiveness, penitence. Someone comes to him and says, I am a father and I'm not getting any children. I've been trying. He says, do istighfar. Someone came to Imam Mujtaba, the second holy Imam, and said, Yabna Rasulullah, the grandson of the Prophet, 3 different people, and you've told them the same thing. You have to seek forgiveness from God, repentance. He said, the Quran says it. Because the Quran tells us, Nuh alayhi salam says to his community, Ya qawmi istaghfiru rabbakum. Oh my community, do istighfar. Innahu kana ghaffara. He is the one who forgives. Yursil as-samaa alaykum midrara. He will send the heavens in rain. وَيُمْدِدْكُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَبَنِينَ. And He will give you children and wealth. The Quran says, Nuh says to his community, the key is repentance. Why? Sins act as a blockade to certain du'as, certain rizq from coming down. So the Quran says, sometimes it's our own actions. We're not getting what we want.
The barakah is there, you're saying, but it's our
the barakah is there, but because we have unfortunately clouded ourselves or encapsulated ourselves with our sins, that is limiting what we are receiving. Sometimes no, God doesn't want us for our own benefit, because He knows what is good for us, and sometimes it's just a test. That also helps in part of the healing process. This is not to say, again, to say, God doesn't want me to have kids, I'm not going to try. No, to try and try and try, but not to fall into despair and question God. Oh God, why me? Why have I done this? I've been to ziyarah, I've been to hajj, I've been to umrah, I've done everything, but still it's not happening. One thing that we are told to do is, as Sister Ruby mentioned correctly, for instance, we can also sponsor orphans. That in itself is amazing. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Yes, you can't bring up your own children, but you can make the other children who are deprived happy. And in the eyes of God, that's something amazing. That's something amazing. The Prophet was with the companions. One orphan comes. A Prophet doesn't have anything with him. The companion doesn't have anything with him. But what he does is he takes his hands, that companion, and rubs on the head of the orphan. That's it, in an act of compassion. The Prophet then looks at him and says, by God, for that thing that you've done, Allah will replace for every hair that you've covered in the hair and the head of the orphan, nur for you on the day of judgment that will show you the way to Jannah.
So that rubbing in the head was almost like sadaqah.
Yeah. It's not wealth. He doesn't have anything to give him, but he's just showing him love and compassion and just caring about the orphans'
And you
well-being.
can do that in your own community. When we say orphans, I interpret that children who need
help.
who are maybe in single parent homes. There's so many people in London, the children don't have 3 meals a day. So many organisations that you could really nurture somebody, and inshallah they'll pray for you, or even your actions has a higher reward. But I was thinking I had a friend of mine who was in the same situation actually, married for a long time, and she asked her husband, or was pleading with her husband to please go and have children. And Allah being who he is, subhanallah, the day a week before they got married, she found out after 20 years that she was expecting. And they both had children together, and subhanallah. So you always have hope.
You just don't know. The believer is never hopeless, right? The believer is never hopeless.
Subhanallah. So always have hope. Always
and
have
they were told that the dua of the believer is always answered, always guaranteed, but sometimes in the hereafter. So Allah has given them, or has replaced for them, something much greater in paradise. But it's about belief.
Do you think it could be a good idea for the sisters to explore, brothers and sisters to explore maybe surrogacy, so that if they were to have a child, although it would on a mahram level it maybe still be the mother who gave birth, but they could have a child of their own that shares both of their DNA. That may be something as an option to bring them closer together.
There was always no, that is permissible, but like I said, these are options that they have to discuss. Each person will be able to look at their own circumstance and see, okay, can we deal with this issue? Is it better if we take that option, and so on? Put everything on the table, so to speak, and have a discussion, very frank, heart-to-heart discussion as to what is best for them. And that's the key to communication and coming to an agreement as husband and wife, I think. But like I said, provided we are aware of the bigger image, and that's what is right for us, and why this is happening in essence, that's the key as well.
Okay, I know we want to make the best use of the time, so thank you both for your very enlightening comments. But I want to just make sure that we do justice to the third scenario. It's a very brief letter, but very strong one. It says, "Dear ItTakes2, my ex-husband is a devil. He frightens away all my prospective husbands. He causes trouble and makes up rumors. He's told people that I was a lesbian, which isn't true. What do? I want to get married, but he is a major obstacle." So this is like a very practical, not just it's a very practical issue, but it's just affected the sister's life in a big way.
Unfortunately,
where do we start, Sheikh?
what we have is sometimes these grudges and the animosity that exists between people extends outside the relationship, and they seek to destroy other people's reputations for their own fulfillment and somehow their own satisfaction. That is satanic, that is unacceptable. I remember an individual who was married to a person. They were about to divorce. They were still married, they were about to divorce. So someone came to him and said, "Can you tell me why you're getting divorced, in the sense that what's wrong with your wife?" He looked at him and said, "Look, she's still my wife. I'm not allowed to speak ill about her." So he's like, okay. After a while, they were divorced. He came to the same person and said, "Can you now tell me what was wrong with your wife?" He said, "She's my sister in Islam. I can't say anything about her." So that mentality, unfortunately, is not being maintained, in the sense that, look, it is, absolutely. There's the element of backbiting. There's the element of destroying people's reputation. There's the hurma, the sanctity of the believer, that is sometimes just ignored just for the sake of saying, I want to expose this person to the world, that they have this and that and so on. There's a difference if someone wants to get married to them and there are genuine, truthful things. Now, because we are allowed in marriage, or advice when it comes to marriage, to ask and to obtain information that is not apparent to people. Yes. So-called backbiting, although it's not really backbiting, but to give things which are not, because it's research.
Specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if, for instance, somebody used to take drugs, God forbid, and a youth, and we get calls from the parent to say, he's proposing, can you give me information about him? Now, I'm allowed to say to that father, he used to take drugs, yes, but to the father for the purpose of knowledge and for the purpose of marriage. That's allowed in Sharia law. But obviously, unfortunately, what's sometimes happening is that this is used wrongly, abused and misused, in that people lie. They want to say, oh, you don't know about this person, there's this and that, and it's not true, you know. And that's part of human behavior, sadly. There's not much we can do other than to say it's wrong, and to counteract it by saying to people, look, you know, that's not, I ask you to do the research, this person's saying this about me, it is absolutely far away from the truth. And to perhaps seek an intermediary with that person. Like, okay, what is it that you want to achieve? You don't want me to get married? Why? Why are you spreading these kind of rumors about me? Or to try and, you know, come to kind of terms to people who are close to him, or a scholar who can really influence him and say, you know what, this is not helping you. This is a sin. This is spreading false rumors against me. And
damaging him and the sister.
He sounds like a control freak and has some issues and
yes,
maybe
yes.
his ego is hurt. So he's trying to jeopardize, because people, when they're hurt human beings, they react in different ways.
They don't react rationally.
Exactly. So he's probably payback in some kind of way, maybe in his mind, that I'm going to do this to you. But it's funny the scholar mentioned that, because in the Middle East, when we were discussing research, I know like in countries like in Iran, when somebody proposes, they'll go and ask their local butcher, the bread, like, what is the characteristic of this boy? He's coming, you know, so pious, but you know him because he comes and gets bread and meat. How does he act when he comes here? Who does he hang around with? And that's allowed because they're looking at the holistic approach. It's not that you're backbiting, but is this person what they really say they are?
So that, excuse me. So that's a general inquiry.
Well, it is a general inquiry, but when you're talking about marriage, it's so important to know what you're walking into. Hopefully, most people do this once. It's good to do your research, but going back to this brother, he has some really serious anger and resentment. And doesn't it say in the Quran somewhere that if you're divorcing a wife, treat her with kindness and honor?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other problem we have is sometimes, you know, the brothers, they keep their wives hanging. They want to divorce them, but they keep them months and months and months.
Yeah,
yes,
control.
It is an indication, or unfortunately, and many scholars, they are running after them and are like, please, if you've decided and that's it, there's no way, and they've tried to reconcile, but it's not happening, then let her go. But sometimes there's legal issues associated as well. Sometimes, yes, it is matters to do with egocentric tendencies. But what I would say to the sister is, don't allow this to get to you. Be strong. Seek assistance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sense of dua, tawassul li Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. Be positive. There are many people out there, not just in marriage, who are facing rumors and misconceptions and myths about them. It's not only in this instance. So what we've got to do is we've got to stand in defiance and clear our name. You know, there's nothing else you can do but to speak the truth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always defend and be with the oppressed against the oppressors. And inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, you know, the avenues for her, if he wants to, will open up. But she has to be confident and positive, and not to say, oh, there's no point, I'm never going to get married because my ex-husband is doing all that and spreading these kind of rumors.
Community that they've both brought, he's still involved in that community, she's still involved in that community, say for 10 years, we don't know what her situation is, and people are wondering what happened, and he's spreading a vile comment about her, and she's thinking, well, how am I going to move?
It seems like a systematic, it's not, he said,
an attack on her character.
Continually.
And Sheikh, this happens a lot, I've noticed, especially with sisters, that the brothers become resentful and they start spreading rumours. And who is the people who spread the rumours? The sisters, which really surprises me.
This is really a problem though, because this is a big zulm. This is a big evil in the sense that he's affecting the sister's life, almost in a sense where, like, I don't want you anymore, but nobody else should have you.
Control.
And also the thing about exposing a believer. You know, this is a big problem. What advice would you give him for his own spirituality?
We always hear about their narrations from the Ahl al-Bayt that says, give
Of the believer.
people 70 excuses.
Mhm.
You know, the believers. We sometimes struggle to give them one. When we hear a rumor, oh, really, did you hear? And all of a sudden, the WhatsApps and the Facebook
Oh,
posts
gosh,
and
yeah,
they all come out. And we think it's so easy to dissect people's lives and to destroy their reputation without first ascertaining, hold on, there might be a motive behind this statement. This person might want to say this because he's angry or he's got issues. So it is so important for the people hearing it as well. It's not just, this is not an answer for the
Like what you were
sister
saying. Yes,
and
yes.
for that ex-husband. It's for the community to be aware of these kind of things and not to jump into conclusions straight away when they hear somebody saying, oh, that she's a so-called, you don't understand, I lived my life with her and she's does this and she's this kind of thing. To take everything with a pinch of salt and say, you know what, I've got to hear the other side as well. And that also happens in when divorce happens. We always encourage people not to, you know, I know people are inquisitive and there's always curiosity. Oh, why is this marriage ended? Oh, he did this to her. Wow, that's not right. Immediately, hold on. But what about it takes two? You know, the idea of, you know, that
There could be one good cop and one
yeah.
bad cop.
There's always elements.
There's
There's
two,
always
yeah.
elements that have to be taken into consideration. Practically speaking, for the sister, one thing, I know it's hard. One thing she could do if she's finding it very difficult is to move to another community. If her reputation is so being unfortunately affected, and I've been seeing some cases where the people try so hard, but sadly, in certain cultures, once they've heard something, it's set in stone.
Yeah, the genie's out of the
Like,
bottle, so
oh,
to speak.
that's it. You know, how can we?
It's
How on earth?
Islamic. I
Yeah.
don't appreciate it.
No, neither do I. No, this is sorry to cut you, but this is really, I'm just upset. I'm really upset about this.
But it's common, and people, as was mentioned, they don't stop at anything to get their own personal vendetta and satisfaction fulfilled. And you know, this is the first step. Sometimes they send threatening words and letters. Sometimes they confiscate matters. Sometimes they start demanding things. Give me the gold that I gave you as a birthday present. You know, or hold on, Sharia says no, you don't have. She doesn't have to give it back to you. You know, or whatever. That's hers now. And so on and so forth. They get violent, they get aggressive because they don't know how to deal with this situation. That's where the role of friends, the true friends, the parents who are calm, the scholars who know them, anyone around these individuals must do in joining the good and forbidding the evil, must rise to the occasion and say, you know what, this behavior is unacceptable, you should not be doing this, look at your akhirah, look at what you're doing. And also, you want to get married? No one wants to get married to you if you do this, you know, because they think, you know, that kind of person is not a good husband, you know, who's seeking to destroy and to, you know, the wife of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, Jodda, that put poison. Muawiyah had promised her that I'll get married, you'll get married to my son Yazid if you poison Imam al-Hassan. Yes? After she poisoned Imam al-Hassan, do you know what Muawiyah said? He said, if you're willing to poison your husband, you will poison my son too, so go away. It's clear, if you're willing to do something, you're obviously going to repeat it if you have the tendency already. So he's destroying his own chances as well by spreading these rumors.
Badly on him.
Of course.
I guarantee you he'll go abroad and find somebody who doesn't know anything about him.
Would you give a word of encouragement to the sisters? Not because it's the sister's fault, but you mentioned something important. This brother is doing something that's very not good, but
Very
like you
not
said,
good.
very bad. But I'm just trying to emphasize it in the sense that. But in a practical sense, oftentimes it is the sisters that will help to generate that. So it starts off in a bad place and
I really
pace.
would encourage the sister to go into herself, do zikr, to get that power, because she needs the strength from somewhere, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would make a prayer, Allah, you know, expose the truth. Don't even rise to this craziness because he wants a reaction. What you need to do is go in there with your head held high, keep to your prayers. Inshallah, people who know your character already, and you don't have to defend yourself. This is ridiculous. This is schoolgirl playground ridiculous comments, and you have no one to fear but Allah. And if people choose to listen to such rubbish, well, you never know. They may be in a situation one day that they're in the same situation. So keep praying. It's very hurtful, but you don't have to, you know, tell anybody who you are. Allah knows who you are. Allah knows your intentions. Just keep the strength. Be around positive sisters. do something worthwhile, because he's expending his energy on something that's pointless and useless. So let him be angry, and the anger may consume him, inshallah.
The other point I would add is, my humble advice to a respected sister is to make sure she doesn't also fall in the same trap that he has, and have the tendency or inclination to expose him in revenge.
Exactly, just
you know, sometimes people say, okay, he's done this to me, I'm going to do the same.
retaliate.
Yeah. I'll show the world what kind of person he is. He's destroyed my reputation, I'll do the same thing. So that is also unacceptable, and you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will really reward her if she's patient, steadfast, and seeks his approval and his satisfaction, and not the people's.
Exactly.
As long as, you know, Imam Sadiq, someone came to him alayhi salam and said, you know, people are calling me all kinds of things, or Rafidis, or you know, the derogatory names against the Shias, other names they use. He's like, okay, if you have in your hands a piece of walnut and the whole world says it's gold, what do you think? It's like, it's going to be walnut. You know, it is, reality is walnut. So he says, don't worry what the whole world says. As long as you are on the right path and you're doing the right thing and you're trying to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it's He who has everything in His hands, and it's He who makes things happen if we truly entrust our affairs to Him.
Just one last point to the sisters in the community. I remember I was in a situation, I walked in, somebody told me something about a sister I'd never met. I was really shocked. The first thing I did was go and give my salams to the sister, sit next to her, talk to her. It was a completely false thing that I had no business in even knowing why the person told me. I had no idea. But just to make a point was to befriend the sister. Everybody was watching, and then people started to come over and, oh, assalamu alaikum, how are you? Exactly. Sometimes the community has a responsibility to support one another and leave these rumours. It's un-Islamic.
No problem. Okay, we'll have to finish up there. Just want to say that to the brothers and sisters that are out there, that when people come to you with, you know, news about, you know, somebody's behavior or somebody's character, sometimes you have to think before you go and spread it and repeat it. You have to think about, what's their motivation in telling me? What's the real reason behind them actually saying this? Before I even consider is it true or false, what's motivating them to do that? We pray for the sister. Inshallah, that, you know, Allah will protect her and raise her up and protect her reputation. And we pray for you all, and thank you for staying with us for the duration of It Takes Two. Until next time, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Do you need some relationship advice? Do you have marital problems or questions? Perhaps you want to get married and you have questions for us. Please send your thoughts or questions to ItTakes2@sophiatv.com.